Hello, everyone on the internet. Today, I've decided to do a bit of a thought experiment and have a bit of a hypothetical discussion on a subject which involves two franchises that I really enjoy, those being Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh! So I'm going to hypothesize about what if the character Yugi had a Magic deck instead of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck. So a little bit of a background about my involvement in these franchises. In the ancient past of the late 90s, I had a neighbor, my dad had a neighbor who gave us loads of old PC games, one of which was Magic the Gathering Chandelier, which I absolutely loved, and I still have it. I still have the physical guidebook that came with it. I literally wrote my master's dissertation on it, so a little bit obsessed with it maybe, but fabulous game, very fun, and it just captured a really good, really good apex in time of the Magic series. So with that in mind, my kind of basis with Magic is very much the old stuff. So you would expect to see cards from Alpha, Unlimited, Astral, Ice Age, all the oldies, and kind of weird niche stuff. And it's impossible to talk about this without having a bit of a shout out to the Slightly Magic online community, which I'll put in a link to in the description below. But these absolute legends have made the game kind of playable on modern OSs. So the original release of Chandelier only worked on Windows 95, so it didn't work on, I believe, 98 onwards or something like that. Because I remember basically we had a new PC and the game stopped working, and obviously as a kid, as a child, I couldn't troubleshoot that because I was a simple child. So huge shout out to the Slightly Magic people. They have a few releases you can download for free. I would say that the latest 2020 release is not the most stable. I think I have the 2016 release, but I've also modded it myself. But there's a couple ones out there to try. But yeah, super highly recommended as a really fun RPG based on Magic. But that's my introduction to Magic. That's how I got into the series. So with that in mind, when I'm building these hypothetical, Yu-Gi-Oh! Characters decks, it's going to be kind of the older style of Magic. So you're not going to see stuff like commanders or planeswalkers, all that kind of stuff. Also just because I don't really like them. And this is something that I'm doing for me for fun. So it's going to be older style decks that I like. So if I talk about my introduction to Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is much more recent, I did have a couple of Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, I think, maybe like one deck or something when I was a kid, but I never watched the show. I never had really played the cards with anyone. It wasn't until the last maybe couple of years that I was introduced to it through Forbidden Memories and Jewelers of the Roses. But yeah, I'm a huge Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan now. Love it. Really fun. I don't obviously have as much experience playing Yu-Gi-Oh! So I could never say, obviously I've played Magic for a long time, but Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm not so experienced in. My kind of perception of how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Comes from my limited experience, and I think it works for this because obviously all the characters I'm speaking about from the show, especially those in Jeweller's Kingdom or Battle City, do have very old style decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! So, I'm not going to be trying to replicate anything like Link monsters, or I don't even know, the very complex modern day Yu-Gi-Oh! Is something I don't really know about, and I'm not trying to emulate any of that. So TLDR, it's going to be old style Magic and old style Yu-Gi-Oh! So with that in mind, let's take a look at my hypothetical proposal for what Yugi's deck would look like if he played Magic instead of Yu-Gi-Oh! Obviously, when I was kind of coming up with the idea of how to do a Yugi deck, I had to kind of think, what were the main themes of Yugi's deck? And this was quite difficult to do because, first of all, Yugi's original Jeweler's Kingdom deck is kind of a mess, really. It's a jumble of kind of random monsters that don't fit together necessarily. So he's got some fiends, I think, or some warriors. So what I tried to do instead of trying to faithfully replicate the quality of his deck, I kind of took the main themes. And for him, obviously, without a doubt, it's all about his favorite card, Dark Magician. So with Magician is not a creature type in Magic, but wizard is. Lots and lots of wizards, which naturally meant that the deck lent heavily towards being blue. As you can see here in the deck, I have made a 40-card deck. I think they're all going to be more or less 40-card decks, which is the minimum deck size in Chandelier, and just kind of makes sense to make a simple deck which isn't going to brick so easily. I went through and looked at all the wizard cards, which were, almost exclusively blue, and what came to my mind very quickly were two cards, which were Apprentice Wizard and Prodigal Sorcerer. Kind of thought, yeah, this is kind of the closest I'm going to get to the Dark Magician looking card, because I've got to kind of consider aesthetics in this as well, like a certain style. So once I decided on having a wizard heavy deck and kind of picking Prodigal Sorcerer, I then kind of just went through the whole library of cards thinking like, what goes well with these kind of relatively cheap, weak, but useful for utility, dealing 1 damage for free every turn sort of thing. And I found a card which fits perfectly with not only Prodigal Sorcerer as a card, but also Yugi's kind of playstyle. Because in a lot of the duels he has, he tends to win by kind of trickery, magic tricks, magical hats, magical cylinders, probably something else I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's normally somehow tricking his opponents is a big thing for him. So it fits perfectly with the card called Dismiss into Dream, which is a lovely enchantment which works really well with both Prodigal Sorcerer and basically another copy called Zuran Spellcaster, which just means that once you have Dismiss into Dreams in play, you basically can just select a creature and it's just destroyed for free. And obviously, if you've got multiple Prodigal Sorcerers, you're just basically clearing the field for free. And unless they have something like Shroud, it will work really easily. So I just thought that's such a good combination. And obviously, if you look at the kind of description of how Dismiss into Dream works, it turns all their opponents into illusions. And it fits the vibe of a magician, like sleight of hand and trickery, all that stuff. So the main combo of Prodigal Sorcerer and Dismiss into Dream is kind of the idea I came up with for this deck. Future me editing this video has also noticed another very useful asset about this card is that it doesn't say destroy a creature, it says that the opponent must sacrifice it. This is a very important distinction when it comes to indestructible type monsters, such as the Blightsteel Colossus, for example. A card like this would allow you to remove that creature from the playing field because it forces the opponent to sacrifice it, and Indestructible doesn't cover that condition. So it makes the card even more useful. It's obviously, Dismiss into Dream is a bit expensive, so it's converted cost of 7, which is why I also like the idea of Apprentice Wizard, just as kind of like this. It's a fun old card, and it is the mana source for the player. So a bit of fun trivia about some of these cards. Apprentice Wizard was first printed in the 4th edition, artwork by Dan Frazier. And Prodigal Sorcerer has been around since the dawn of time in Magic. It's from Alpha, originally, artist Douglas Schuler. And the card Dismiss into Dream, which I hadn't heard of before making this deck, is actually from the core 2014 set. So it's always really fun to take a more modern card and see how well it kind of synergizes with old cards. The artist for this one is Sam Wolfe Connolly. I also went ahead and included some utility cards that you would normally see in a Chandelier deck. Probably wouldn't see outside of that, or probably wouldn't see that in a tournament or anything like that. For example, Ancestral Recall is kind of like a famously considered overpowered card, but it does suit Yugi very well because it's essentially the Magic version of Pot of Greed, which I believe is a banned card, also for being too strong. It's just very useful here to quickly get the cards needed for the combination. And I've also included Energy Flux, which is just kind of like another nice kind of bit of a trickery surprise thing, especially because this deck has no artifacts. It's just a nice way of countering an opponent that depends on them. With all of that in mind, I have kind of included a second layer of combinations in this deck to avoid relying just on Prodigal Sorcerer. So I included a card called Nameless One. And this is for a couple of reasons. It fit really well when I found it. Number one, it seems like a natural fit for a wizard archetype deck. Obviously, it becomes stronger with each wizard in play. And the second one is because in Magic there is the function, it's normally called Morph, but essentially it's you play a card face down and then turn it up by paying a certain cost, which is not that common in Magic, but it fits perfectly because obviously Yu-Gi-Oh! Is, unlike Magic, it's mostly about playing cards face down and then surprising your opponent with them. So I thought it was a good fit. So a quick shout out for the rest of the wizard cards I haven't mentioned yet. Merchant of Secrets is, again, like a poor man's Ancestral Recall. It's just drawing a card. Riptide Director is another way of drawing cards quickly. Thought it was kind of cool. The fact it's got 3 toughness is maybe useful near the start of a duel. Zuran Spellcaster I've mentioned is just a copy of Prodigal Sorcerer as well, so it's the same function. So let's see how it performs in a duel. So in order to test this deck out, I'm going to take it for a spin in Manalink 3.0, which is kind of like the accompanying PvP-ish game that came out along with Chandler. 3.0 being the most recent Slightly Magic implementation of it. So in this duel, I've made a deck, interestingly enough, I've made a deck for Joey Wheeler, which I will talk about in a future video. But let's have a look and see how it does. So basically, as soon as Dismiss into Dream was put into play, and as soon as there were enough Prodigal Sorcerers on my side of the field, it became very easy to just sweep away all of those really high power and toughness creatures. And essentially, there's nothing the enemy can really do about it. Joey's deck is not equipped to deal with enchantments, as red naturally has no enchantment removal. It was just a matter of, could I get the combo out quickly enough before I died? And in this case, I could. In these cases, I could. So it made for easy wins. Let's take a look and see how it performs in the next one. The same maxim also applied when fighting the Kyber deck that I made, which was a blue, black, and white dragon-typed deck. Just wasn't equipped to deal with this kind of strategy, and also depended heavily on lots of creatures directly attacking with a high power rating. So yeah, the deck did pretty well there. Interestingly enough, in the next duel, you'll see an example where the Yugi deck does not do well, which is against the Weevil deck I made, which is a kind of token-based insect deck. As it's quite a slow process of eliminating enemy creatures using this strategy, if somebody can just throw an army of, the 1/1s at you, it's not as effective, as we'll see in this next one. So it goes without saying, for me at least, that the most important part of making a deck is it fun to play? And the answer for Yugi's deck is yes, it's a very fun strategy. It's not always reliable, and that doesn't really matter because there's always something the deck can do, whether it's just amassing wizards and then using Nameless One or using the Dismiss into Dream Prodigal Sorcerer combination. It's a fun deck that is useful in a lot of situations and has its own strengths and weaknesses. And I think that it's faithful to the idea of Yugi as a character in Yugioh. It has that embodiment of his dark magician and the kind of tricks and pot of greed, and I'm hoping that this was fun to watch. I enjoyed making it, and I hope to make some more kind of Yu-Gi-Oh! Magic crossover things in the near future. So thank you for watching.